In 1993, a naval engineer at Ulsan University in South Korea took the measurements of Noah's Ark exactly as the Bible describes them. He entered them into modern naval design software and got a result that left him speechless. The vessel described by the biblical text was hydrodynamically sound, structurally stable, and extraordinarily efficient for the purpose the text described. This is not faith, this is naval engineering. And the question that result generates is this: how did a Bronze Age man know those were exactly the right proportions? What nobody tells you is this. In 1872, an Assyriologist announced to the Society of Biblical Archaeology in London that he had deciphered a cuneiform tablet describing a flood story extraordinarily similar to Genesis. The audience was so shocked that a lady in attendance fainted. That tablet contained the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it changed biblical scholarship forever. If this channel shows you the science behind sacred texts as you've never seen it, subscribe now. This channel goes where faith and evidence meet. Genesis 6:14-1-6. God gives Noah specific construction instructions with a precision that is striking for an ancient religious text. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. A window shall you make for the ark, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. The most extraordinary datum in the biblical specifications is not the absolute size of the ark, it is the ratio between its length and its width. 300 cubits in length divided by 50 cubits in breadth gives exactly 6:1, a length to breadth ratio of 6:1. This proportion is not arbitrary. It is the optimal proportion for a vessel designed for stability in open ocean under conditions of extreme waves, without its own propulsion. It is not the proportion of a canoe or a river barge. It is the proportion of an ocean-going ship designed to survive on the open sea. The biblical text not only gives the ark's external dimensions, it specifies its internal structure: 3 decks and rooms, in Hebrew, chin-nim, which can be translated as nests, cells, or compartments. 3 decks with a total height of 13.5 meters give approximately 4.5 meters per deck, similar to the ceiling height of a modern high-ceiling floor. With a deck area of 135 by 22.5 meters per floor and 3 floors, the total deck area would be approximately 9,100 square meters. In terms of cargo capacity, Dr. John Wood Marapi, in his 1996 technical analysis, Noah's Ark, a feasibility study calculated that the ark's total volume would be sufficient to house approximately 16,000 individual medium-sized animals, plus the food and water needed for a year, assuming the animals were in a state of reduced activity, or lethargy. This calculation does not prove the flood was global or that all species were on the ark. What it does prove is that the biblical dimensions were technically sufficient for the scale of the project described. The Hebrew text of Genesis 6:14 specifies that the ark must be built with gopher wood. This is one of the most debated terms in all of Genesis, because the word gopher appears exactly once in the entire Bible, here and nowhere else. No other reference helps identify it. The biblical text specifies the ark must be caulked, sealed, with pitch, both inside and out. The Hebrew word is kopher, referring to natural bitumen, tar, or organic compounds of bituminous origin that have a long history of use in ancient Near Eastern ship construction. Notice this detail. The use of bitumen as a naval waterproofing agent is not a biblical innovation. Excavations at the H3 site in Kuwait, dated to the 5th millennium BC, found fragments of cane and wood impregnated with bitumen that archaeologists interpret as remains of waterproofed vessels. The instruction to caulk inside and out is technically correct. Water pressure acts from the exterior on the hull and from the interior through condensation and the water that animals and provisions inevitably produce. A vessel designed for months in the water needs bidirectional waterproofing. The debate about how many animals could fit on the ark is probably the most frequent objection and also the most poorly framed. The reason is that it is almost always based on an imprecise reading of the biblical text. Genesis 6:19, 2:0 specifies two of every sort. The text says two of each kind, not two of each existing species on Earth in the 21st century. Noah did not need to bring two of every breed of dog that exists. He needed to bring two of the canid type from which all modern dog breeds derive. If we apply this criterion, two of each family or basic type, not two of each differentiated species, the number of animals on the ark drops dramatically. Dr. Wood Morapi calculated that the number of biblical kinds needing representation would be approximately 8,000 distinct types, equivalent to about 16,000 individual animals. The average size of the animal on the ark would have been comparable to that of a large rat. Since most terrestrial animals, including most reptiles, amphibians, and birds, are significantly smaller than an adult sheep, more than 200 cultures around the world have versions of a great flood narrative, among those with elements specifically similar to Genesis: a character who receives prior warning, a vessel for survival, preserved animals, and a return to land. We find the Greek tradition, the Hindu tradition, the Aztec tradition, the Chinese tradition, and several traditions of the First Nations of North America. The most parsimonious explanation for this global distribution of a narrative with specific similar elements is that all these traditions preserve the cultural memory of a real flood event of massive scale that affected the ancestral communities of many present-day cultures. In 1997, marine geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman of Columbia University published a study proposing that around 5,600 BC, approximately 7,600 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea broke through the Bosphorus Strait and catastrophically flooded what was then the Black Sea Lake, a freshwater lake much smaller than the current Black Sea. The speed and scale of this flooding would have been extraordinary. The Mediterranean water fell into the lake in a flow estimated at 200 times Niagara Falls, raising the water level at a rate of 15 to 20 centimeters per day. In 1 year, the lake would have transformed into a sea of 155,000 square kilometers, flooding more than 100,000 square kilometers of fertile agricultural land that was then densely inhabited. The Siloam reference in Genesis 8-4. The mountains of Ararat. In Hebrew, Hare Ararat designates a mountainous region, not necessarily the specific peak we today call Mount Ararat. The region of Urartu, the ancient name for the area corresponding to eastern Turkey, Armenia, and northwest Iran, was known in the ancient world as Ararat. If Noah's Ark was a real vessel, what would have happened to it after Noah and his family abandoned it? Wood, under any exterior conditions, does not survive indefinitely. A wooden vessel abandoned on a mountainside would be decomposed by fungi, bacteria, and weathering within centuries, let alone the millennia that have passed since the biblical flood. However, under glacial ice, wood can be preserved in extraordinary ways. The Viking Oseberg ship, preserved under earth in oxygen-excluding conditions, was discovered in 1,904 inches, a remarkable state of preservation after more than 1,000 years. Advances in ground-penetrating radar imaging and high-resolution satellite photography make systematic searching of Ararat with modern technology scientifically viable, though results so far have not been conclusive. We have examined today Noah's Ark with the tools of naval engineering, archaeology, linguistics, geology, and comparative anthropology. We have seen that the biblical proportions of the ark turn out to be those of a vessel technically capable of surviving in open ocean under extreme conditions. We have seen that the specified materials are technically plausible with ancient Near Eastern technology. We have seen that more than 200 cultures have versions of a great flood narrative, and that there is at least one specific geological event that could explain that global cultural memory. The sum of all this does not prove or disprove that the flood was global or that the ark was real in a historical sense. What it does is make these questions more serious and more complex than Hollywood movies or automatic disbelief allow. There is something the study of the ark's engineering reveals about the nature of the biblical text that few people consider. The ark's specifications in Genesis 6 do not read like myth. Myths do not give measurements in cubits or length to breadth ratios or instructions about decks and caulking. The ark's specifications read like a technical manual preserved within a narrative context. That does not mean everything in the account is historically literal. But it does mean that someone, at some point in ancient history, considered those specifications important enough to preserve with numerical precision. And those specifications turned out to be correct naval engineering. Why would a religious text preserve with that precision the measurements of a vessel? The simplest answer, though not the only possible one, is that someone lived it. See you in the next one.